2023 has been a pretty good year for gaming. We've gotten a lot of stuff that we wanted, and hopefully 2024 will be just as good. We've all waited a long time for this focus tree rework, and I'm happy to finally show it off to y'all. This update is also considered Kaiserreich's 1.0 patch, so it's fully released after 7 years. Oh god, that makes me feel old. Since I am playing Germany, and I know it's going to be super strong, I'm going to buff some of my enemies so I have a little bit of a challenge when I play. So here we have the brand new Germany focus tree. We have our industry and Black Monday branch. Next is the foreign policy tree that also has a part about the Middle Europa. The military part is massive with the amount of focuses you can do. And we have some politics and Second Weltkrieg specific focuses, followed by a massive branch at the bottom for after you win the Second Weltkrieg. It's a lot of content and I'm here for it. So if you enjoy watching me play through all this, please consider liking the video and subscribing. I'd love to hit 40k by Christmas. The beginning lore got changed a bit, so Kerensky still gets unalived at the start, and people aren't taking it well. There is also an election to deal with at the start, and you know what? Gonna mix it up a bit and not be a political extremist this run. I'm gonna do a normal, blue-pilled Germany today with the SPD. But while this election is happening, the market is at release version of Cyberpunk levels of stability, so panic was setting in, and people wanted to get their money out of the market, collapsing everything. Despite the government's best efforts to calm the people down, they were not confident in the market. But just because everyone at home is getting poor and suffering, doesn't mean we still aren't going to be giving war a chance abroad. The Nanjing clique required our aid, and I was going to make sure they got it. And while this was happening, I had to get this country to recover from Black Monday. And the new way you do it is through a card game, basically. You draw cards and play them in response to the issue to get enough points to win without going over your debt limit at 200%, and it slowly reduces the Black Monday penalty. It's not that complicated to do really, you just gotta read, which actually does filter half the players. Nobody wins a majority in the Reichstag election, so the Kaiser appoints this dude Kurt von Schleicher to run the show for a little bit, but he's kinda suspicious, cause nobody with a mustache like that is up to any good. I can finally start doing economy focuses that unlock more cards for me to use and give me nice bonuses to help out my country as well. Since I'm being a boring liberal this game, I need to help the SPD get a coalition by reaching out and hearing other people's stupid opinions so they'll work with me and let me have a majority in the government. As if this country wasn't suffering enough, the selfish workers were striking over stupid stuff like pay, and a lot of people supported them for this. Too many people actually. While everyone would agree that this is pretty bad for Germany, Schleicher saw an opportunity. Keep the crisis going for long enough, and people would give him more power, and then he could declare himself leader of the German Empire for a safe and secure society, yada yada yada. Nah, I'm shutting down that strike, and Schleicher's plan goes down with it. For this campaign, I was going to make sure Germany became a proper democracy. The SPD was going to start with 2 W's under their belt, with the Nanjing clique winning its war with our support and later resolving the worker strikes. The devs added this Middle Europa mechanic where I guess nations can vote on different buffs for everyone in the bloc. I'm sure somebody put a lot of effort into making this, but sadly I would ignore this for the rest of the game. To be fair, I had very important stuff to deal with that was distracting me. I'm microing the Spanish volunteers, playing Yu-Gi-Oh to fix the economy. Now Bulgaria's fighting the other Balkan nations, gotta get involved in that too. American Civil War is popping off, need to support the United States. I mean the one that aligns with my interest. Wait, why is he a fascist now? Long bros. We're being slandered now. So I have to manage volunteers in 3 different wars across the world, plus the Black Monday recovery mechanics, and it's just a lot to deal with. Trying to keep up with it on 3 speed just feels like... Still, I managed to work with the volunteers. Kingdom of Spain is for sure gonna win the Spanish Civil War now, but for the internal problems, they just kept coming. The conservatives were just summoning a bunch of random Prussian politicians to take down the SPD coalition. They created a budget crisis to shut down the government, and we had to go around listening to more people's dumb opinions so we could actually pass a budget. And you may think we're suffering, but I'm looking at Austria, and you can see that it can always be worse. Oh wait, that's another war I'm gonna have to get involved with. Hooray! I'm doing my best to help Austria, and fortunately, Romania makes it really easy, joining the war against Austria and just completely forgetting that they were still at war with Bulgaria. You're probably wondering what my volunteers in America are up to, and the answer is nothing. They are getting supplied just fine, but they're under strength because every time a ship goes to give them some reinforcements, they just disappear in the Bermuda Triangle. I dealt with the budget crisis from Prussia, and I think that's the last move of the opposition, only for them just to have another plan to overthrow my government. So, I basically have to form a democratic front to resist them. I don't know, I've hit my reading quota for the day, so I'm just kind of skimming at this point. I want to focus on the real content and helping possible friends win their wars. And with Romania gone, Bulgaria is just coasting to victory since Serbia got itself into a two-front war and just ended up destroying itself. And with them gone, Bulgaria can just declare victory in the 18th Balkan War, and I can focus more on helping Austria. I was putting in the work, trying to give Austria a chance to save their empire, but I can't save the AI from its own stupidity. They left their capital open and the Czechs walked into it, costing them the war. But this actually works out for me because I just ally all the breakaway states and then annex Austria itself. More bad news arrives. Russia leaves Middle Europa to form its own faction to fight us, and some of the Balkan states joined them, including Bulgaria, despite me helping them. We were so nice to them too, and they just did this to us. I want to take a moment to appreciate how overpowered the German industry is with these modifiers that they get, because it's not even 1939, and I'm sitting on 100% plus production cap for everything, and it could still be higher. Foreign affairs wise, I'm wrapping up Spain with a W, but America is an L because of that stupid reinforcement glitch. With Long on his last legs, I try to save him at the last minute by sending some tanks. When they arrived, I was going to prepare Manstein's counterattack for Dallas. I hoped the Southerners were going to feel hope, but they just surrendered instead. Hurt my feelings a bit, like the tanks weren't that bad. It's 1939 now, and the game is telling me to get ready for war because the haters are out to get me, and I gotta start mobilizing. I realized I forgot to intervene in the Italy war, so I try at the last minute to save them with my tanks, and it seems nobody respects my help anymore because they also just surrender before I'm able to give them orders. Flanders tries to declare independence, but with me being able to directly intervene, it goes exactly how you'd expect. I make one final attempt to stop the CSA and support the Pacific states with some good volunteers. While this was happening, I finally got around to fixing the economy. Now, I could have done this a year ago, but I just kind of got sidetracked with all the wars and the legions of conservative politicians attacking me. But by the time my units get to the front line, the PSA has pushed to the Mississippi River. I made sure to give the PSA material aid because the industry wasn't even close between the two sides. But my tanks just weren't allowed to perform. The PSA wouldn't keep the flanks of my tanks safe, and when I tried to move my other tanks to break them out, they were doing a controlled retreat, and the PSA just wouldn't give them any supplies, making them move at a crawling speed. It just kind of feels like I'm the only one trying to win this war.
Let me have a try. Open sesame! Well, I've done all I can do.
I know the war is going to start soon, so I'm just going to dip and leave the PSA to its fate. France is about to invade me, so it's time for me to lock in. It's going to be a rough start because I don't have any manpower, but I'll make do. When the war started in the West, I tried to go for a quick kill on the Netherlands, but it doesn't work out because the AI keeps doing this cringe thing where they support their ally. Can't break the Dutch cities, and they broke my lines in Wallonia, costing me a lot of good men. Also, since I didn't have manpower, I don't have any divisions for when Socialist Italy eventually joins the war, but fortunately, everyone around me is pitching in, offering their divisions, so I could just throw them at the front. By April, all my haters were coming after me, and a reason why I'm kind of struggling a bit at the beginning is you're slapped with this lacking preparedness modifier that makes it hard to defend, and you have to deal with it through this small branch in the focus tree. But after some time, I was able to make moves again, and I did manage to retake Cologne, but that was all I could do over there, because in the east, Ukraine was on the brink. They needed Manstein's counterattack, and they arrived in time to save Kiev, and something needed to be done about this bulge the Russians created in the front line. Manstein would mass all the tank divisions with a lot of air support and got ready to launch the counteroffensive.
I keep having this nagging feeling that I've forgotten something.
Hey, if you forgot it, it probably wasn't all that important.
Yeah, I guess.
He still tried his best with what he had, but it was scuffed. No air support, and the tanks were always running on empty. Despite this, the Russians had overextended themselves enough that I was able to snipe an entire Russian army before they could retreat. The fuel situation sucks so much because I could easily get air supremacy against the AI, since for some reason they don't upgrade their planes. Like, we got the French commune here still thinking biplanes are the wave. Just kinda makes you feel bad for the people actually piloting those planes. I desperately needed more oil, so I used what little fuel I did have to support a major offensive in Romania. Other fronts were clearly suffering due to my lack of attention, but I had to go all in on this one to have a chance. The Russians started evacuating through Odessa, and I tried so hard to kill them in there, but the lack of fuel and air support made it impossible. But they did band in Romania, and Russia is just not having a good time across the front because they lost Romania, and in the north somehow my allies got to Petrograd, but those successes were temporary because the Russian army returned to Romania and I lost my oil again. It was a desperate struggle to get the oil back, but did manage it, and I was gonna make sure the Moscow Accord was not coming back, so I finished off Bulgaria too. Poor Bulgaria couldn't do much against my tanks, and soon was no longer for this war. But sadly, I lost Illyria at the same time, making the Balkan front a lot more awkward for me. I start making moves on that front to retake lost territory, since for some reason, the random AI divisions I put on this front didn't do a good job holding. And while this was happening, Wilhelm III was trying to make moves to re-establish the supremacy of the Kaiser. He desperately tried to convince anyone to work with him, but somehow still struggled to get support. The German people heard about his efforts and started to organize against him, basically telling him, Get a life, you fat f-! So he had to give up, and the Reichstag and democracy were here to stay. Liberalism had won again. The tanks made a very juicy pocket in Czechoslovakia and soon freed it all from the occupying Reds. With that done, I felt it was time to give a Ukraine offensive another shot, since I actually had fuel for it. And it's just amazing what you can accomplish with tanks when they're not running on fumes. Hard to keep track of all the divisions the Moscow Pact lost here, but I'm gonna take a safe guess and guess that it's an army and a half. I know they're crippled after this, and the Ukrainian front should be able to hold without me, so I need to go back to liberating my land. There was just a lot to clean up in the west. The Third Internationale had just started flooding Denmark and going into Germany, so that was top priority. Then I had to take off all the pressure on the Hungarians to make them breathe easier. And with the trash cleaned up, I can make a bold play to get Austria back. Now, nothing says military genius like pushing through the Alps in the middle of winter with tanks. Don't ask me about the attrition losses, I was not brave enough to check it. All that matters is I did manage to form a decent pocket that once liquidated would free up most of Austria from the Red Menace and give me some much needed industry back. I've done great work with my tanks so far in the war, so I felt empowered to make an extremely decisive but bold offensive. Not only would this kick the French out of Germany, but hopefully get the Internationale completely out of Western Europe. I had 24 tanks with full air support. I was fully locked in, and the offensive had a great start. I was blasting through the enemy lines, not a care in the world, until that age-old German problem popped up again. The front line by Romania was looking as barren as a theater show in the Marvels, so the communists just took my oil. Despite my lack of fuel, the damage had been done to the French front line. It was completely shattered, and I could just rush forward until I was in Paris. The lack of fuel did make the cleanup of the rest of France take significantly longer, so I spent the rest of summer making limited gains until the French finally tapped out in September. I was so used to rolling through France and into Spain that it felt weird that I actually didn't have to deal with Spain this time around. I could fully focus on killing Italy. With France and Italy gone, cleaning up the remainder of the Internationale in the Balkans was just so much easier. Also, just want to give a special shout out to the Socialist Republic of America for going America first. really made this war a lot easier for me. Ukraine must be pretty mad at me for prioritizing France over liberating the rest of its country because they won't give me the Romanian oil state and didn't even set a garrison on it, letting the rebels just freely blow up my oil supply. So, since they're forcing my hand, I set up an armored and mechanized army to just battle plan Russia. And the poor AI, you just start using divisions that have high hardness and they will never be able to counter you. But it is fun to just chase down the large retreating stacks of infantry. But I'm honestly surprised that 10 million Russians have died by now. I don't even remember doing that much to them. But with Ukraine fully liberated, they stopped throwing their stupid tantrum over Romania and finally give the oil to me. Since I am such a good player of this video game, I am capable of multitasking. I can masterfully manage pressing go on the battle plan in Russia while also hitting go on the naval invasion order for the UK. Now I can sit back and watch my armies go forth and conquer, and now I get it. I truly feel like him. It's funny how after the Union of Britain capitulates, I check the remaining divisions and they still have around 2 armies left. It just feels like a plot hole. The British caring more about defending other countries than they did about themselves? Like, come on, Kaiserreich, at least make it somewhat believable. The Russians try to beg for a conditional surrender at the last second, but come on.
What did I do to deserve this? I mean, what specifically?
And with their surrender, that wraps up the Second Weltkrieg, unlocking a final part of the focus tree, Pax Germanica, where we get to build up the puppet states we set up in Britain and France, gloat about how awesome we are to the world, and tie up some loose ends. Unfortunately, the Third International lives on through India's leadership, so I have to beat them, and also Japan has just been wilding in Asia for too long, so they gotta go as well. I basically have to build my supply behind me as I push from Afghanistan, but I do eventually push into Pakistan. I did a lot of other stuff while I was invading India. Some holdouts in Europe needed to be dealt with, like the Irish. Norway tried its luck out in the far north of Scandinavia, but they weren't gonna escape German liberalism.
Leave me alone!
We also sent the new Russian government another constitution, and to make sure they would never threaten us again, we would cripple them by putting in something they couldn't handle, forcing them to give equal rights to their minorities. Meanwhile, our constitution is gonna be great. We are firmly established as a republic, and I get some very fair and balanced modifiers to go with it, but it's not like that matters much when I've already won the game. With the fall of India, the Third International is gone for good, allowing me to get rid of most of the syndicalist regimes around the globe. And now Japan was the only major country actively opposing me. We've been at war for nearly 5 years at this point, but this is the first time I've actually directly fought them, and I don't get how everyone else lost to them. All I did was just naval invade with experienced soldiers armed with modern equipment supported by 400 bombers, and they just crumbled to me. As my Marines hop towards Japan, I send my tanks and mechanized westwards to Mexico because I might as well just deal with the last significant syndicalist nation. It's gonna take a while for them to get there, so I just keep liberating my colonies in the East Indies. It took me a week to destroy the Vietnamese insurgency that my colony struggled with for 5 years until Japan entered the war. With Taiwan secured, I now have a great base to send my Marines to Japan from. And the invasion of Japan and America basically went the same as my invasion of the UK and Russia. Japan also had that lore-breaking problem where they don't know how to defend itself, so the battle plans are just smooth sailing. Honestly, I feel like defeating the other 2 most powerful militaries on the planet should probably require more brain power than pressing go on the battle plan, but I'm not an AI guy. This is as close to a world conquest as I'm gonna get because I'm pretty much done here. The world is at peace and I left it in a good place. Liberalism and democracy prevail over the world with Germany as its leader. The Entente still technically exists, but they're irrelevant. Brazil has dominion over most of South America, which I'm sure the people here are going to be very happy with. I hope you all enjoyed this playthrough with the reworked Germany tree. It certainly is overflowing with content. Like, I still have 2 years worth of focuses left in 1946, but there's no need to keep going at this point. Anyways, like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and if you want to go the extra mile to support the channel, please consider supporting me on Patreon. I want to do YouTube as a full-time job, but I don't want to be at the complete whim of the algorithm, and a solid Patreon base would allow me to prioritize quality in my videos and to feel secure and try new content for y'all to enjoy. So if you want to become one of my amazing alumni like these people, go there and give what you can, and I'll greatly appreciate. And for the rest of you, see you soon.